Late last month, I should note, in one fail swoop, the North Carolina Supreme Court took an axe to American democracy. On April 28th, the newly Republican-controlled court issued three major decisions, each further chipping away at voting rights in the state. There is Harper v. Hall, which has essentially greenlit partisan gerrymandering. Holmes v. Moore, which reinstated a strict photo ID policy. And Community Success Initiative v. Moore, which upheld the state's felony disenfranchisement law. Now, if any of those cases sound familiar, that is because the first two were already decided by the court just a short time ago. But when Republicans gained a 5-2 majority on the bench in the 2022 midterm elections, GOP lawmakers asked for a do-over, even though none of the facts surrounding those cases had changed. In a scathing dissent to Harper, one of the court's liberal justices, Anita Earls, called out her colleagues for their, quote, shameful manipulation of fundamental principles of our democracy and the rule of law. She went on to write, quote, I look forward to the day when commitment to the constitutional principles of free elections and equal protection of the laws are upheld, and the abuses committed by the majority are recognized for what they are, permanently relegating them to the annals of the court's darkest moments. I have no doubt that day will come. Here to discuss this, North Carolina Attorney General Josh Stein, a Democrat. He is also running to be the state's next governor in 2024. Attorney General Stein, it is great to have you back on the show. Thank you for making time for us. So talk to us about the implications here. What do these decisions themselves mean for voters in your state, for those that may not know?
Ayman, it's a pleasure to be with you. We're at a troubling moment here in North Carolina. We are at the center of our fight for freedoms, whether it's reproductive freedoms or folks' voting rights. We had a big win last year. It was in December. We argued, my office, along with the governor and some plaintiffs, had argued to the North Carolina Supreme Court that partisan gerrymandering violates our state constitution, violates a number of our declared rights, free elections, equal protection, and others. And the court agreed and struck down the old maps, which were highly partisan gerrymandered. In fact, they would have produced a congressional delegation of 10-4 or 11-3. The court ordered them to draw new maps. The court came up with maps, and we have now a delegation of 7 Democrats and 7 Republicans, which we're a 50-50 state. The only thing that changed from that decision in December to today is an election and 2 new justices were seated to the North Carolina Supreme Court. So the Republican legislators petitioned the court to get that decision reconsidered. That was a radical request, because usually when courts reconsider decisions that they've made, it's because there's been a change in the law from the U.S. Supreme Court or some severe factual misunderstanding by the court that needed correction. Neither of those things happened. The only thing that happened was 2 Republican justices took their seats. It is an absolute offense to the rule of law that they have thrown out the old decision and now have empowered our Republican supermajorities to engage in the most brazen partisan gerrymanders here in North Carolina.
You have a better pulse. You have a better sense of the pulse of voters in your state. What do voters in North Carolina make of this blatant partisanship of the court? I mean, how do they see this impacting their democracy? And do they share the concerns that you've outlined?
Yeah, there's no question that voters are incredibly concerned. They not only threw out these voting cases, they threw out a public school financing case that ordered the legislature to finally uphold our constitutional mandate to ensure that everybody has a sound basic education. The court just threw it out. And so folks are incredibly distressed and realize that this court has completely shaken our understanding of what the rule of law is meant to be.
You said, you're concerned, obviously, about the freedom, and you said this is an assault on freedom. How worried are you about the state of democracy in North Carolina?
Unfortunately, we're always at the center of voting rights struggles here in this country, and the fight is still going on. We know that there are going to be some ugly maps that the General Assembly produces, but honestly, the Senate had been elected under unconstitutional maps the last go-round in 2022. So we've been fighting these fights for really the past decade and a half, and we will keep fighting. There are so many of us here in North Carolina who care fundamentally that the power belong to the people, that we as individuals have power in this government, not the politicians, and that people should choose their representatives, not the other way around. And we're going to keep fighting and keep fighting until we win.
Let's talk about two things you mentioned. The 12-week abortion ban passed by the state legislature was just vetoed by the Democratic Governor Roy Cooper. But as you also mentioned, the Republican supermajority may be able to override his decision if they get enough votes. Talk about that process and what the outcome might mean for women in your state. Do you believe there will be any Republicans who may develop a conscience before that vote and actually not vote with the supermajority?
We certainly hope so. I was with the governor and about 2,500 other North Carolinians on Saturday when he vetoed that bill. There are 4 Republican members of the legislature, House and Senate, who in their campaign in 2022 said that they did not want to restrict women's reproductive rights here in North Carolina. Obviously, this is a dramatic reduction to people's freedom and restriction on their ability to make these decisions for themselves. So we are urging every North Carolinian, contact every Republican member of the General Assembly in the House and the Senate and urge them to respect people's fundamental freedoms and sustain the governor's veto. You know, we're not naive. We know it's a long shot, but we're going to fight and fight and fight and urge folks to reach out to the members of the legislature.
Let me ask you a political question, if I can. As I mentioned, Mr. Attorney General, you are running for governor. Your Republican, one of your declared Republican opponents is the current Lieutenant Governor, Mark Robinson. This is a man who has brutally smeared school shooting survivors, has called LGBTQ people, quote, filth. How do you feel about having a man like that so close to the governor's mansion? What do you plan to do about it?
Well, I'm troubled that he says these things that are so hateful about other human beings. It's absolutely contrary to the way a leader is supposed to be. You're supposed to represent every North Carolinian, those you agree with and those you disagree with. He does not do that. I'm incredibly troubled about the prospect of his becoming governor because he has made it absolutely clear that he wants a total ban on abortion in North Carolina. And if he wins the governorship, along with a willing legislature, that could be the next step of what happens in North Carolina. And so I am all in to win this race because I want to be there for the people of North Carolina and ensure that they have the right to live their lives the way that they want, not have Republican politicians in Raleigh dictate how they go about their lives.
North Carolina Attorney General Josh Stein, it's always a pleasure, sir. Thank you so much for your time. Greatly appreciate it.
Amen. Thank you.